Okay, Hottie, we are into June, and that means the training for the Leadville Trail 100 is really ramping up. Depending on how you structure it, there's 2 or 3 blocks of hard training between now and race day.
Oh, yeah. Love those long days in the saddle or the shorter sessions with intensity. You know what you and I could have used when we were starting to do this crazy race? How about some Floyd's of Leadville CBD?
Oh, that would have been so good. Last century, back in the old days when dinosaurs roamed the earth and I was first starting my training for the Leadville Trail 100, my recovery protocol was pretty loose. I got some nutrition, but otherwise I, sort of let the proper rest take care of itself to whatever degree it did. I just didn't think about it.
And that still goes on for many of us. In addition to the training, there's work, family, chores. So that rest portion of recovery can really suffer. That's why we use Floyd's of Leadville CBD.
As the day's winding down, I find my brain can still be in overdrive. So I like to take a Floyd CBD soft gel right after dinner, just to sort of take the edge off and help me start winding down. And then with my mind at ease, I can get to sleep quicker and get the real recovery happening.
Now, while a lot of supplement companies will try and sell you on how their powders or pills help you build strength and endurance, ultimately it is rest that gets us the gains we have worked so hard for.
Yeah, rest matters more than anything else. So get that recovery going at floydsofleadville.com and use the code FATTY to get a 15% discount.
And thanks Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsor of this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 4, episode 10 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty to everyone, including myself. This has been a great season of storytelling, and we want to thank everyone for the positive feedback we've been getting on it. We've got more stories in the hopper, queued up and ready to go. But this is not one of them. We are returning to our how-to roots with this episode, and Hottie has really been driving this topic.
Now, this show, we tear a chapter out of our other podcast, The Marginal Gains Show, presented by Silca. We're going to get into chains and lubes and the surprising amount of time to be saved on the Leadville course by paying close attention to both.
And we have a real expert in this area to explain it to us. Now, during this episode, you're going to hear plenty of brand references, including competitors of our sponsor, Shimano. There are a lot of chains to choose from, both within the Shimano catalog and outside of it.
But we believe you will learn in the end of the show that Shimano makes overall the best chain for mountain biking. When it comes to speed and reliability combined, Shimano that is the clear choice.
Yeah, I ride with Shimano chains exclusively and have been for several years now. And I've never broken one, never. And I'm always impressed with their efficiency. And when I pair them with a Shimano cassette and a derailleur, it's shifting magic. It's that simple.
We sincerely hope you are on a Shimano drivetrain, but if you're not, there's a chance you can still run a Shimano chain on whatever you're running. And based on how fast they are, that is something worth considering. Also, if it's been a while since you have owned a Shimano chain, you'll be happy to know that Shimano now does quick links for much easier installation and removal.
So one more time, this show stands by Shimano, and we thank them for supporting us. For more info on Shimano and their chains and drivetrains and brakes, go to bike.shimano.com.
Okay, you ready to nerd out? I mean, really nerd out?
Hottie, I'm going to do my best. Look, we've done hours and hours of content on Leadville-related equipment, including drivetrains and chains. We've talked about tires ad nauseum, frames, and now we're taking it to a new level and taking a very hard look at the hardest working piece of the puzzle and how it can make us go faster.
Adam Kerin of Zero Friction Cycling is our guest. He runs an entire testing center dedicated to chains and lubrication. And his website has an extensive amount of information on how well lubes perform in a variety of conditions. For this show, though, we asked Adam to focus on the conditions we see in the Leadville Trail 100 and how we can save valuable time by using the right lube. Adam Kerin is with us. Fatty, this may be the most long-distance interview, the most widespread interview we've had. I'm in Los Angeles, you're in Utah, and our guest, Adam Kerin of Zero Friction Cycling, is in Australia. That's where Zero Friction Cycling is headquartered. Adam, thanks so much for being here.
Oh, no, thank you for inviting me on. So, yeah, it's a great sort of pleasure and excitement to sort of talk about my favorite topic for such an event. So we don't actually have any really just super iconic events like this in Australia. So I'm quite jealous. And it's on a bucket list to be able to get over there one day to try to do the Leadville and the Dirty Kanza and possibly what's it called? The lead boat. Lead boat. Yeah. So in lieu of being able to actually, compete in them, it's great to be able to, I guess, still be on such a show and have some input and hopefully help some others go faster.
Cool. Yeah. Well, you're well versed in some of the great events here over in the States, the long distance events, the long distance off-road events. Now, we want to tell folks that we've caught Adam as Australia is just about to go into winter, and that means he is preparing his yard for winter right now. So you may hear on occasion what you think is chain testing. No, it's actually probably a leaf blower or some type of gardening work going on in the background. So excuse us if we have a little interruption from the Australian gardener, but winter is coming in Australia.
Yeah, it's actually some big sort of landscape work because we've moved into our new house, and but we've had quite a battle getting the landscapers here to try and stop us having a yard of mud before winter with dogs and actually have not mud. So many apologies. Yeah, there are some machines running by the landscapers and just couldn't be avoided. They had to turn up today because it's not raining today. So,
I just figured you were so busy that you were mowing the lawn while you were podcasting with us, that you were just multitasking.
Yes, almost that busy. So, yeah.
Well, as they would say in Australia, no worries. We can handle this. It's no problem at all. Adam, I have, brushed up on Zero Friction Cycling. I've read a lot on your site over the last 6 months about your testing and about what you do in Australia as far as lubricant testing, chain testing. It's fascinating as all hell. What I've not been able to find out about you while reading all that stuff is how Zero Friction Cycling started. There must have been a life before ZFC. How did this become part of what you do?
How did you get your superpowers?
Mostly from others. So I've had a corporate background pre this, so in corporate management, and was mostly in, wherever I started, I always ended up in a process improvement type role. So I just tended to always look at where things needed to be done better and set about how to ensure that we can do them better, because I hate systemic issues, and a lot of large companies have plenty of those. And then I took a career break. So my wife is a doctor. And so when we started, family had a little guy. So I took a couple of years of paternity leave. And at that time, I was really getting into my cycling and was sort of really, learning a lot about the technical side of bikes and how to make sure we look after them and how to make them go nice and fast. And just happened to be a similar time that Friction Facts started up. And it actually all started with really reading that sort of article with Velo News that they did with Jason Smith. So the early days of Friction Facts, where they did the first outright efficiency testing. Hadn't even known that you could actually say, wax a chain versus drip a lube on and that sort of stuff. And so it was a bit of a light bulb moment about, that just obviously seems like such a vastly better way to go. And so I bought my first bag of molten speed wax. And then when Friction Facts was bought out by Ceramic Speed, and I just felt there was still so much work to be done in that space. So whilst Jason Smith had really pioneered and got a lot of us thinking a lot more in that space and thinking better in that space, his test being an outright efficiency test, it didn't really, cover what happens to the chains, obviously, as we continue to ride them, what happens, when they're outside the lab and we start exposing them to contamination. And we've got so many lubricant, manufacturers and products claiming that they're amazing and do all these wonderful things like repel dirt, dust and grime and clean as they lubricate. And I just, felt very, I guess, sort of passionate that there needed to be an independent test facility to, actually assess these claims, because obviously I wanted to know myself. And just found myself, I guess, in a position where I had the time and the curiosity and the motivation to actually see if I could start down a path of doing that. So I did start zero friction cycling just as, I guess, a hobby curiosity business, to move from, I guess, that curiosity side of things to we've got the retail side, which is the overall business model is to test to find what are the genuinely best performing lubricants, so that I know what to stock in my retail side of the business, and what to recommend, and obviously which ones to avoid. And from there, it's also grown into, I do a lot of testing for now a lot of the biggest manufacturers who will want to have their lubricant benchmarked.
So you obviously have a vast amount of knowledge, and you're willing to share it. And here's what we really want to focus on today. Imagine, if you can, a 100-mile mountain bike race with about 85 of those miles, I'm guessing, on dirt, decomposed granite, a little bit of sand, sometimes very, very sunny, occasionally a little bit rainy. What should racers in this hypothetical race know about their drivetrain? I mean, because, lube is one thing, but a lot more than just lube. Their drivetrain, their chain, and their lube, in order to have a fantastic day at this race.
No, this is a really, I guess, for me, what I've always found a fun area, and it's been great to see the focus on this from, I guess, a lot of media on cycling outlets is really starting to focus on the drivetrain side of cycling, because there's, I guess, if you go back sort of 10 years ago, people didn't probably think about it too much, and now, thanks to the focus from a lot of places, it's really starting to sink in, I think, to a lot of the cycling demographic that my chain does. It just does so much work, and there's a lot of moving parts to the chain, and it's completely exposed. So, one of the analogies often used with some customers that are considering what they should do is, and really because a lot of the claims as well, people think I can save 5 watts straight up or 8 watts straight up just with some proper maintenance and a better lubricant choice versus what I'm running. That just seems too high a number that I'm not sure. Yeah. So I'm not really sure if a lot of them are not really sure if they sort of believe these claims. So one of the best and easiest ways to think about it is, like, let's just say that due to COVID, there were no dust seals anymore, no bearing seals on any of your bearings. All of your bearings in your wheels and your bottom bracket were completely open to the elements. The challenge of trying to, say, keep your bearings running silky smooth, as opposed to running rough, gritty, high friction, wearing out quite quickly, that would be an extreme challenge to try to keep your bearings running.
I think I've had that nightmare.
Yeah. So, and then, so to put that into, that's, I guess, the challenge that you have with your chain, except it's even more exposed and it's working like your bearings spin comparatively quite lazily versus the huge amount of work that your chain is doing as it's whizzing through your drivetrain. So this is where, the differences in, say, even a little bit of contamination that gets into a lubricant and becomes part of the lubricant will quite quickly add up to, a watt, 2 watts, 3 watts, and just keep going, because there's just so much going on there. So yeah, chains and lubes just really are your first, your big low hanging fruit for saving a nice big handful of watts. And the other, I guess, the main bonus there is that literally the watts you save in that area are watts that you were previously putting into eating through your drivetrain components. So it's not like, say, if you run with a lower rolling resistance tire, where the drag you save is simply saving the drag. The drag that you save by taking out, easily avoided friction by top lubricant choice and maintenance is literally drag that was, or energy that was previously going into eating through your lovely drivetrain components just all that much quicker. So if you take out 5 watts of energy every pedal stroke that's literally going into eating through your components, that's a fair bit of energy that you're saving from, eating through your components, which is why, the cost to run difference between the top known lubricants and some of the worst tested is huge.
Can you translate that? I mean, 5 watts, that sounds like a good number, but, 104-mile mountain bike race, 12,000 feet of climbing, almost all of it on, well, about 85% of it on dirt. What does 5 watts mean?
Yeah, actually, I should have plugged in that with the bicycle calculator to calculate that out into some actual time gaps. So we might maybe do that, and we can send it through, and we can add it to show notes. But the main thing is that, I mean, and obviously it varies by sort of, you got to factor in rider weight and all that sort of stuff. But people can do it themselves. They can go to like a cycling calculator, and you really do it on the climb. So you pick your main climbs. I think the Columbine Mine climb, which is pretty darn long. Powerline, St. Kevin's. So you can put in, okay, for my body weight and bike weight and gear, if I'm able to average 170 watts. I use conservative numbers because of the altitude, and it's pretty brutal, versus, okay, if I get a bonus 5 watts, all right. And you just say you can add the time differences even on just those 3 climbs, and go, cool, just for a better lubricant choice, I'm going to be, X amount of free time faster at the end. But it's going to be substantial. So, you could definitely...
A minute, 2 minutes, 7 minutes? I mean, just give me a ballpark.
Ballpark, I would say, if you were going from, say, just your average random choice drip lube that you've been running to a top lubricant choice and saving that sort of 5 to 7 watt range, for most riders in an event like this, I would peg it easily at around a sort of 10-minute saving. So just in your lubricant choice. So
there you go. Okay, now you got my attention. 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think we have the right guy on the show here. I mean, that could mean the difference between a big buckle and not for a lot of folks, or just getting home and not, or making a time cut and not. That kind of time right there. Really, even though the race is like this all-day race, I mean, those minutes matter a bunch. Now, okay, tell us then, if we've got 5 watts on the table that we can pursue through our chain and the rest of our drivetrain, you are a chain and lube guru. How would you suggest somebody set up their chain for the Leadville Trail 100 or any long distance 104 mile? I'll try to do my kilometers real quick. What is that? 100? I don't know. I can't get it. But what's your top lube choice, top prep choice for an event like this?
So I guess step number 1 for everyone is to strongly consider having a dedicated event or race chain and obviously training chain. It's just not, even running your top lubricants, you hammer away in training for a few months, that chain is going to drop some efficiency. Absolutely, there's no way about it, even if you perfectly clean it and reset it. So you don't see, for instance, Tadej Pogacar or Primož Roglic, they're not going to rock up to Paris-Roubaix on the same chain that they just did their last 2-month training block on. They're going to have, obviously a nice prep chain. So have a dedicated event chain, and that costs you no more because sooner or later you're going to need a new training chain. Your dedicated event chain then just moves over to be your next training chain. You buy one new chain as per normal to be your dedicated event chain. So it's just a really smart way to roll. The only caveat with that, obviously, the only trap that people fall into sometimes when they have, say, a dedicated race chain is they have hammered away in training running X lube. They put on their lovely new race chain or event chain, and their cogs worn or chain rings worn, and the new chain doesn't play well with your worn cassette, and you get jumping under power and that sort of stuff. So make sure that that it works. So nothing new on race day is always the mantra. Test out your event chain, at least a couple of weeks before, so that you know that if your cogs or chainring is worn under power, and you test it out in each gear under power, that you can source a new cassette to go with your lovely low friction chain. So then lubricant choice. So this is where we get to a bit of the fun, because everybody has differing views, I guess, on how they like to, believe in, say, immersive waxing versus chain coating lubricants versus wet lubricants. So there can be quite passionate views on this topic. So I know from other podcasts and forums. So there will be people that, if they hadn't thought about it before, that immersive waxing, so I was one of these, immersive waxing, it just immediately made Captain Obvious sense as to why it would be so much better. All of your parts are coated in a super slippery solid wax, and it's a solid lubricant, so that's going to be extremely good in a high contamination environment, versus wet lubricants. every particle of dust is going to stick to a wet lubricant chain on contact. And so they can start quite well, start very low friction, but they're going to increase in, friction a lot more quickly. Just some data on that from the dry contamination test block that I do. The average for the top 5 tested lubricants overall, all of which happen to be immersive waxes, so your Silka Hot Melt, M-Speed Wax, Ceramic Speed UFO, Silka Super Secret Drip, and so on. The average wear rate through that test block is 6.3% of the wear allowance. For wet lubes, the top 5 wet lubes, the average wear rate through that block is just over 27%. So even the top known wet lubricants, they're just not going to compete really with your chain coating lubricants. So if you are in the camp of, yes, I'm on board with immersive waxing, then things are great. Your top tip is to get either a Silka Hot Melt or an M-Speed Wax chain. And handily, I've just recently, mentioned before the podcast, I've recently completed a 12-hour XC marathon event myself. I've always used for a very long time now either M-Speed Wax or now Hot Melt I've been testing out as well quite a bit in the field. This one was Hot Melt, and so I did 213 kilometres, and it was still in the absolute silky smooth zone. So for those that have ridden with wax chains, you start to know when the treatment is starting to reach its sort of end stage where you start to get that really dry sound. Your chain will start to make a bit of a zzz sound as you're pedaling along when the wax coating is getting too thin, but still in the silky smooth zone. So really, a 100-mile or 160-kilometre event, if it's dry, is not going to stretch an immersive wax treatment. The chain coating lubricants, such as your Super Secret Drip, which is basically trying to put hot melt into a bottle, and your UFO Drip, it may, I haven't tested them in such a length, but it will either be just okay for that length or it's going to be close, because with your lubricants like that, half of what you're putting on is carrier. So as opposed to immersive waxing, you're putting your chain in a pot of 100% lubricant. And so then I guess the other part would be to talk about if you don't believe in immersive waxing, or that's just not going to be your thing, or you don't really sort of believe in the chain coating lubricants, then wet lubricants are just the way you've always rolled, and you're going to stay rolling with wet lubricants. Then the top known lubricants that we have at the moment in that space are the new Silka Synergetic, and also one that probably I think more in America have heard of would be the Nix Friction, which is quite that was the original sort of top wet lubricant that Synergetic then set out to beat.
Yeah, Fatty, in fact, has been a fan of NFS Lube. I've seen it in your toolbox there, Fatty.
Oh, yeah.
I know you've used it, and now he's basically on Synergetic. I can second the hot wax for lengthy, dirty, dusty events. I've done 2 now on Silka's hot wax, and I had no problem making it through a 90-mile event that was mostly dirt, and a 75-mile event that, again, was mostly dirt. In fact, I rode the same chain for a couple of more easy rides after that and had no issues at all with that. The brand you didn't mention here, Adam, is Absolute Black. Now, they've come on the scene with a hot wax that I'm going to tell folks probably they should stay away from. I've tried it, didn't think much of it, but they have a pretty interesting drip lube. It looks crazy. It looks like oil. It's black. It's liquid. You submerge your chain in it, and they're making some pretty strong claims about that lube lasting a long time in all sorts of conditions.
Yes, no. So for their graphene lube, which was the one that they first went with, I did a huge amount of testing with that for them. Unfortunately, all of that testing is still kind of locked up under NDA, but I can talk about it broadly. Their claims with regards to its outright longevity, I can pretty much back. So it is the world's longest lasting lubricant for a single application treatment, and it's I guess quite exceptional in that side. So if the event was wet, so when it's wet, the water obviously is bringing contamination deep into your chain, and that abrasive contamination does tend to abrade through your waxes, and it will abrade off the chain. So all lubricants are going to have a shorter treatment lifespan the harsher the conditions. That's just obviously something that's it should be hopefully fairly obvious. And the graphene lube does sort of handle is going to handle things longest because it does have the greatest outright longevity, but it is a bit of a, I guess, more involved treatment. So you do need to properly clean the chain, which you need to do anyway. So that part's okay. So for anyone who's been looking at any of the, I guess, the marginal gains podcast stuff, the zero friction cycling resources, friction facts, it's been established for, I guess, a very long time now that, the first thing to do, step one, is to remove that factory grease. No matter what lubricant choice you're going to go with, hopefully it's a good one, is to get the factory grease off and then run with your lubricant choice. So that part of the prep is fine, but then you do need to immersively apply this lubricant, and that's a little bit, can be a bit more difficult. They do supply you a plastic bag and so on to do that, but some may find that a bit sort of challenging, and it is very expensive. So I do offer that treatment prep as a pre-prep option. So customers that don't want to have to try and risk doing that themselves, I clean the chains ultrasonically and apply that lubricant ultrasonically, and you're literally going through about $30 worth of that lubricant in that treatment, that first treatment. So it's a very expensive option. So it's if we were talking about a 200, 300 mile event, I probably would have listed that off the bat as my sort of number one consideration, because you are going to be able to go flag to flag without having to worry, whereas the other options are going to struggle. But for this event, it is like, if you like it, it is an amazing product. But just be aware that it's certainly not cheap, and that for this length event, unless it's really wet, then you're not going to need to go down that path versus the options we were sort of talking about before. On that, so what I didn't cover, so I'd sort of just briefly run through it, I guess, a few of the top ones. So other popular options are, say, Squirt and Smooth. So they are two other, I guess, quite well-known wax-based lubricants that do have very good longevity, and they will handle an event such as this perfectly fine. And they're quite cheap, so that's part of why they're quite popular. The only thing I would mention with that is that, and it's something that I think that they should be a bit more on the front foot on themselves, is that, and I've tested both Squirt and Smooth 6 ways from Sunday with regards to their initial penetration issues. And a bit like the graphene, it is quite significant. So they just really do struggle to get past all the little bits down to the pin. So if you're going to go the Squirt or Smooth lubricant choice, which is a perfectly, honestly, they're a very good lubricant, so well worth considering, and they're quite cheap. Get a little screw top container. So you guys are probably familiar with the screw top container that Silky use for their super secret drip. You can get them from a supermarket. You can pour your bottle of lubricant into that screw top container, do an immersive application to get past that initial penetration issues, get the chain out, wipe off all the excess, allow it to set overnight, and obviously you pour the lubricant from the container back into your bottle. That's really your best way to get past that, and then you will have a very well prepped chain.
Wow. 10 minutes just by treating your chain properly. That is so good. That matters. Another easy way to save time is clothing. Recently, we were talking with Josh at Silka about what he would change about the riders of yesteryear, like the great Eddie Merckx. What would he tell the cannibal to do to go faster using period correct technologies?
And the first thing out of Josh's mouth was clothing, specifically the jersey. Josh would get those riders of yesteryear into something with a snug fit to reduce that drag. And he says even Eddie would go faster.
Yeah, so we say take that advice. Go over to DNA Cycling, get a race cut jersey. Hadi recently mentioned those bright yellow jerseys we were wearing the last time we raced the Leadville Trail 100. Those were definitely race cut.
And even though the pedaling speeds are usually not as high as Merckx on the road or the track, aerodynamic drag is still a factor at Leadville. Josh told us anytime speeds get above 15 miles per hour, a jersey can definitely have an effect.
Now, I get it. Race jerseys are tight. They can be a little uncomfortable, especially over a long day at Leadville. But because it is so long, the little differences, well, they start making a big difference. And I got to tell you, the DNA race jersey does not give me any issues. Their material stretches with ease and comfort. It conforms like a second skin. So get your arrow on and get a DNA race cut jersey.
And while you're at it, go custom too. DNA has got all the tools to help you with that. To get started, go to dnacycling.com and click Custom Apparel. Well, our friends at Envy are off and running with their bike frames, their new bike frames. In case you missed it, Envy is taking orders on 2 bikes, both road, 1 race, 1 endurance model, and they have a cool behind the bike breakdown on their website.
And one of the interesting parts of that section is the results of a survey. Envy asked its customers what they wanted next from the company, even though Envy already makes them. Wheels was the top answer. But then came the really interesting stuff.
Cranks and saddles were right up there. But by far, the number one answer was the one they responded to, and that is a frame. And in fact, Envy has been hearing that for a long time now.
From me. Envy has quietly been in the frame business for years as a carbon tube supplier to the likes of Parley and Independent Fabrication. They are part of the team that built the radical Cervelo P5X triathlon bike, and Santa Cruz hired Envy to do the rear triangle on the first full carbon downhill mountain bike.
What we're saying here is Envy is listening, and they have heard your call. Please build a mountain bike. If or when that happens is still unknown, but clearly Envy aims to please.
I am first in that line. I just want everyone to know that. So check out what Envy does have in the mountain bike category right now, and that is the best bars, stems, seat posts, and wheels that you can get by going to enve.com.
Our guest is Adam Kerin of Zero Friction Cycling. There are 5 watts on the line with this interview, so let's get back to him. Okay, so let's talk about race day. Now, I think a lot of the folks who attend and do this race, they are fine with dedicating a chain to the race. If they tear through the chain in the process of racing, as long as they reach their goal, a lot of folks are just going to live with that. They're fine with that. That said, there are, several pit stops, up to 4, for these folks who participate in this event. And a lot of them consider topping off during the event. Now, hopefully, if we've done an immersive wax or if we've used a great product, our lube is going to hold up. But if it doesn't, and even if that's an immersive wax, if we start noticing our wax-based lube or our hot wax start to fail us late in the event and we feel like we want to lube, how should we be prepared to do that? What type of lubes can we put over, say, a hot wax?
So if you've gone the hot wax or the chain coating, my favorite one, if I had to do that, would be the Silka Super Secret, because that was the first wax emulsion lubricant that I tested that had 0 penetration issues. So and people, if they've used that, they'll notice that if you try to apply that over the bottom span of your chain, it just slides off the rollers onto your floor. It's a super, super slippery lube. So you can very quickly apply that, though, over the top of the chain, over your cassette, and it will just get straight in there. So it'll just slip straight into where it needs to go inside your chain. You can apply that very quickly on the go and then set back off. Obviously, then you are running, I guess, what's a wet lube from that point, because it doesn't have the set time. But the main thing is if that's a better option versus running with a lubricant that's done, because if it's done, your friction's going to shoot right up. So you can get that in there, and then that plays perfectly with, obviously, it's designed to run with wax, basically. So that's the perfect choice there. If you've gone down the wet lubricant path, some of the top options that we mentioned earlier, like Synergetic and Nix Friction, they're not the easiest to apply in a hurry. So your Synergetic has that little needle applicator, so it's pretty hard to actually get that out. So I'm actually a bit of a fan. If I was on the wet lube camp still and my wet lube was a bit not that long lasting, or just I forgot to re-lube it and it was running out, I'd be going Rock and Roll Gold. That's a pretty, proven pretty low friction wet lubricant. And again, it's just very quick and easy to apply. And speed's going to be the key, because you don't want to spend 2 minutes there dripping a drop per roller on your chain. You want to stop, get your lube out, squirt that on as you backpedal and go. That's going to be the aim of the game. You want to get that lube done in about 20 seconds.
So should everyone have their own lube with them? As some of us are going to have crew. A lot of us are not going to have crew. And so if you stop at a neutral aid station, they are more than likely, they're fantastic volunteers, going to offer to pour some lube on your chain. Should I say, no, I brought my own and I'm carrying it here, use this instead? What is the consequence if I instead say, I've been doing an immersive wax treatment the whole year, but 70 miles into the race, things have started sounding kind of gritty, and I go ahead and let someone put on, whatever lube they happen to have?
Yeah, at the end of the day, if you've got your own lube and it's a top lubricant choice, try to obviously run with that versus just taking a random lubricant choice, because you don't know if that's going to be a good choice or not. But if that's all you're left with, then that's going to be better than than running with a not lubricated chain. So it's going to, I guess, depend on your sort of prep there. But if it's dry, honestly, you've unless you've just gone out and done 50 miles as a warm-up the day before on your event chain, if you've got a hot melt prepped or M-Speed wax prep chain, I forgot to mention also the Ceramic Speed UFO. So the UFO chains that you get are waxed with Ceramic Speed's UFO wax, which is obviously different to their UFO drip lube. So their UFO wax is same as re-hot melt. It's going to be a lot longer lasting than the drip, because it's 100% lubricant as opposed to being half carrier. So UFO Ceramic Speed chain is also an option there. So any of those immersive wax chains are going to get you through that distance. But if there's a downpour and it becomes wet and things go south in terms of your treatment lifespan, then either having your own bottle that we were talking about before ready to go at, I guess, particularly at the latter aid station, would be your preference. But if not, take what's offered. That's going to be better. If you hear your chain starting to squeak, then all the tests on unlubricated chains are that they are in the sort of circa 20 watt range, which is not what you want when you're on your last legs. You don't want 20 watts. You want every single, and that's the thing as well with, I guess, the making sure that you've got a good lubricant choice, is that you want to know in your mind that when you're dead on your legs, that every possible watt that you're outputting is going to pushing you further forwards, not being lost to, friction in your chain. So,
when I'm marching up the power line, I don't want to lose any more watts, although I don't think my chain's even turning at that point. So I want to ask, because I kind of want to dig into this if it's raining question, because, there's a good chance that the night before the race, I'm going to know whether it is likely to rain during the race. Should I change or make a different lube decision? Should I do something different if I can see, looking at my weather app, that bad weather is likely and there's going to be wet sand flying up into my drivetrain the whole day? This
is where it does get quite tough, because if you've got a 100-mile off-road, proper wet event, that's about as extreme a lubrication challenge for your chain as you can get. So, really, the only product that I would be confident in, if it was full wet for that basically whole distance, the only product I would really have confidence in that would go flag to flag would be your Absolute Black Graphene Lube. Pretty much every other choice, it's at some point, if it's proper wet, it is going to give out over that distance, and you are going to want to, depending on which your choice is at either aid station 1 or 2, or have you got 2 or 3 in there?
There's 2. You hit them each twice. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would be, if it was wet, as soon as you start to pick up that your chain is starting to feel dry, then add lubrication at your next stop. And depending on how fast you are as well. So this is something that's used sometimes in the quite long events or stage races. Depending on how bad things are, sometimes even having a second prep chain can be a way to go, because you're going to, the water is going to bring in a whole bunch of contamination. There's just no way around that. Water's the transport medium to bring all that grit deep into your chain. And yes, relubricating is going to obviously help versus having no lubrication in there and just grit and water. But you're adding lubrication over the top of a whole bunch of abrasive stuff that's in your chain and grinding away. So if it's, again, it has to be pretty bad to consider this option for such a distance. But if it was like solid wet, sometimes considering having a chain that you can swap, so that you can go back to starting with, say, a 4-watt chain at the halfway point or whatever it may be. So, but it depends how quick you are. I can take a chain off and put a new one on in about a minute, because I do it a lot. If you've never done it before, that would not be, a good option. Or if it's, something that you, if you sort of start immersive waxing now, you'll get pretty quick at popping chains on and off. It's a doddle. So, but yeah, it would.
Hottie, how fast can you swap a chain?
Not as fast as Adam, but one tip I think, and I wanted to check this off with Adam, regarding quick links, since we're on the take the chain off, put a chain on thing, a lot of folks will carry quick links in the field in case they have a chain failure. Now, It's my belief that you should carry actually a used quick link because they're a little easier to engage. If you have a brand new quick link in your saddlebag, in your, emergency pack or wherever you carry it, you might be out there struggling for a while because those new ones can be really hard to engage, right? I mean, Adam, there's a lot of stuff put out there about, don't reuse quick links and blah, blah, blah. But I say carry a used quick link at the very least, if you're gonna carry them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, and for events like that, also having a multi-tool with a chain breaker, because although the chains are pretty good these days, so chain failures are, I would say, pretty rare for non-e-bikes. But at the end of the day, you can be only one bad shift away from a bent link or a snap link. Especially if you're really doing that shift under power. And there's some, from what I've had a look at on the profiles of some of the clients there are some pretty steep pinches. And sometimes, you find you're overgeared and you end up trying to grab a different gear under, whilst you're doing 300 watts on this 25% pinch. You can have a split second where all that load is going through one link, one tooth, and it doesn't go super well. So, for mountain biking, everybody should have, as Mike says, like a used quick link is definitely easier to put on than a brand new one. Especially some brands like the Shimano quick links are very, very hard to put on. They do require a good tool and a good amount of force. So, that is very handy, but carrying a new one, obviously at worst, and making sure you've got a multi-tool with a chain breaker. There are a bunch of great options out there. To me, being out on a key event or a mountain bike without, a chain breaker is, you're sort of, I guess, taking some chances there. So, and I'm a fan as well, like the mantra of nothing new on race day. If you have never broken a chain before, and put it back together with a quick link, then you should practice that. Same as you would, practice changing a flat tire or using a dyno plug or, whatever your puncture strategy is. The first time that you do that should not be on the event that you've just spent months training your butt off for and possibly incurred quite some expense and whatnot to get there and actually enter and do, because these things that go, I'm not sure how you might have 1,600 on entrance. Some percentage of those are going to have a broken chain. Some percentage will have flats, and some will fix those within 2 minutes, and some will fix those in half an hour. So you want to be in the 2-minute category, and that just takes that little bit of practice.
You sound just like one of us.
So the week of the event, here's how it kind of works for a lot of folks. They show up 5-7 days before race day. They spend time in town. They go out and ride the course a lot. So they're working their drivetrain a lot, right? What would be your strategy or your advice to a racer regarding, the riding they're doing the week of the event and then being ready on race day? Is it a 2-chain strategy for you? Can we go and race or ride our race chain the week of the event and then prep it in the final hours before race day? How do you like to see that carried out?
Personally, I guess it depends a bit on what your packing ability is. So if you're flying to Colorado, you're probably going to be a bit more restricted than if you live there. But personally for me, I'm still going to be doing my training on my training chain, and my event chain is going to be one, just pre-tested, obviously, as we spoke about before, at basically full power in each cog to make sure that it plays with my cassette perfectly fine and with my chainring. And so then I know that I can just pop my event chain on race day. So all I've had to pack is my second chain, and my training chain, all I need to pack is my lubricant for that chain. So if you're waxing, you can use your Silka Super Secret or your UFO drip. They're perfectly fine to add on top of the chain and then just re-wax when you get back home. You don't have to clean them because they're nicely wax compatible. Or obviously wet lube, you're using whichever wet lube you're using, and you've still just got your separate event chain. If you're not running with a separate event chain, you're going to want to clean that chain and or pre-prep that chain with whichever way you're doing it. So what that involves is going to depend on what you're running.
Right. If you're running just one chain in Leadville, you're going to race the chain you brought there on the bike, and you're probably a drip lube, a wax-based drip lube candidate. That's probably the way you're going to lean, and what you're going to want to do just the night before the race is you do your best job to clean the week's worth of riding off of that chain and get at least get some fresh lube on that chain and give it sufficient amount of time to penetrate that chain, because that's the dealio with these wax-based lubes. Even the Super Secret lube, which is a great lube, Josh will tell you, it works best, and so will Adam, because I've seen your test results on that lube. It works best when it's had a full day to get in there in those rollers. Now, that's not really practical for a Leadviller who only has one chain. They're at best going to get 12 hours, maybe 18 at the day. And that's good. I mean, that should get into the chain and get it dry. So that's kind of the strategy there. Hopefully you can bring two chains to Leadville. I think that if I were racing this year, that's how I would do it. I had a race chain, I'd have a week of chain, as it were. Let me ask you about something else, Adam, that's come up in the press and our friends at Silka. And I know you haven't had time to test this yet, but I've seen you comment on it so far, and that is Josh now has diamond polished chains that he's selling. I can see diamond polished chains on a UCI Pro Tour rider. That sounds like a thing. I could see it on a top-level domestic roadie. Mountain bikers, I'm going, are mountain bikers really going to fork out that kind of money to get that extra watt that you're going to get over a good hot wax chain? And that's what Josh has told us that you're getting. It's a watt over the top lube or the top hot wax. What have you been able to glean from this so far about diamond polishing and whether it is worth it, especially for us off-road folks?
Yeah, that's I guess like a really fascinating little area for me. So I greatly enjoyed that, I guess the podcast on the marginal gains where Josh talked about that process, because that expanded on that a lot more than what we sort of got from the media release articles. So I think, and I guess what's funny or what's been interesting from my side as well, I guess being, playing in the low friction game and efficiencies, and I race road, I race time trial, I race cyclocross, and I race cross country mountain bike, and seeing the take up or interest from those different demographics, and I had thought that mountain biking would be really easy in terms of getting them onto a much better lubricant, because they're riding in a much harsher environment than what road cyclists are. And I guess that couldn't have been further from the truth. So the tradition, and I guess because I started cycling relatively, late in my life. So, and I sort of found out as I started this that the traditional way for mountain bikers was you rode everything until it was unrideable, and then you replace your entire drivetrain. And that if you talk to a mountain biker in general, and not to be too stereotypical, but in general, if you talk to a mountain biker about friction, I get a lot of puzzled looks. So when I was first sponsoring some mountain bike events, and I'd be talking about what zero friction cycling is, and as soon as I talk about friction, I would get a whole bunch of very strange looking expressions in the crowd. And so really what's changed over the years has been, I guess, the cost of components. And, so XO1, XX1 and your XTR and so on components, they're not that cheap. And so really people are starting in the mountain bike world, they're starting to twig around to, they're going, oh, I really don't want to wear out my beautiful, $800 or whatever it may be cassette and $170 chain. And what was it that guy was talking about? He said something about, he said that friction works I didn't really get, but then there was that stuff he was talking about, wear rates. So what was that? And then they'll sort of come back around and look. So I would say, back to your question, Hottie, that I don't think there will be many mountain bikers that would consider putting the money up for a diamond polished chain to save a watt on top of the watt. That's probably going to be more the roadies. It'll be interesting. I guess the top of the field, though, there's a bunch of pros that usually tend to race this, like your Lockie Mortons and so on. I wouldn't be surprised if guys in that area, sort of more from a racing background where, they're really thinking about their friction on all fronts, that they would look at this sort of stuff. It'll be interesting to see how many Josh is selling pre-Leadville, and if he has even the stock to actually sell to meet the demand. So, yeah, I would say if you are thinking about it, to plan ahead, getting hold of stock, because if you try to get a fully prepped race chain 2 weeks before, you'll probably find that might be a tricky challenge. So,
yep. Well, we love Josh here. As some listeners know, Fatty and I also host a podcast with Josh. He's a terrific guy. He is really out there trying to find every little spot where you can gain something. And his chain, now we can't wait to see Adam's testing on it. I hope we find something great about it. And look, if you want to fork out the money, and we asked Josh about this on his show, if the money is... If you're okay with a $175 chain and you get something with that, yeah, there's a watt there for you. You're going to find it. You're going to get it, according to Josh. And and it's fine. Put that chain on your mountain bike and have at it at Leadville. There's nothing wrong with that. But that gets me to my.
Will that make up for the 15 pounds I need to lose right now? I'm just wondering if I can just buy that chain instead of losing the weight.
Yeah, so I was going to say, not to, I guess, I think one of the conceptions with some of the race chains is that it's often that, say, it's a really expensive investment for, I guess, this chain that you're going to use for the event. If you get into that path of, or just that process of, you've got a dedicated race chain and training chain, you're going to get a lot of events out of that chain. So once a chain has gone through all that prep, so whether it's just your fully optimized race chains, as we, I guess, have known them for a while now, so from Ceramic Speed, myself, and Molten Speed Wax and Silka, or the new diamond polish, a lot of labor has gone into the braking process, all the ultrasonic cleaning rounds, the wax is ultrasonic in with some pretty fancy ultrasonics. The wax is broken in so that you've got a chain that's super fast out of the box. From there, post-event, there are, and we've got this on the website, but we'll be updating more, and I'll be starting my own sort of YouTube soon. You can then look after that chain post-event, get it right back to extremely low friction and, wrapped up, put away, ready for your next event. So it's not a big one-off purchase that you just get to use for Leadville. It's a purchase that you look after that chain, you're going to get a whole bunch of races out of it before you're going to sort of look to move it over to be a training chain.
Well, Fatty, as you know, I'm a hot waxer. In fact, I run my chain spa here, and it's still in operation. I love tinkering in my garage, and most of what I do is either based on my discussions with Josh or with Adam. But I'm also a customer of ZFC. I've gotten chains from Adam too. And just to see, I want to do a little comparison. Do my chains work as good as his, as the one he sent me? They don't, but that's okay. I still get good mileage out of my chains. Now, Adam, if somebody does not want to get into the whole process of waxing their own chain, they just want to buy the thing, they want that race chain, or they want a chain that's been prepared by somebody that knows what they're doing, and they're reaching out to you to do that. First of all, we need to know two things. So the Leadville race is the second week in August. I need the chain before then, and probably want it, a few weeks before then, so I can do, as you said, test it out on my bike and make sure it doesn't jump in my cog. So there's that. So how much lead time do I need to give you so we can get to the States and I can get it on my bike? Again, about 2 weeks out. Second, do I need to tell you anything special about what I'm doing? Like, here's my event, here's how dirty it plans to be, or can you just take it from there?
Yeah, so most of the orders for, I guess, anything like this just sort of run through the online store. I don't actually push, I guess, sales a lot on the international side, just because I guess the shipping out of Australia is pretty horrendous. We're a ginormous continent with relatively tiny commerce. So I would say have a look at, if you're looking at a pre-prep chain, which is honestly, it's a great way to go because you don't have to faff around with cleaning off the factory grease and disposing of that properly yourself. So a pre-prep chain isn't the same as a race chain. So a fully optimized race chain goes through a whole bunch of stuff, which is you're paying for all that labor. A pre-prep chain is basically one that has had the factory grease ultrasonically cleaned off, and then it's been waxed with fresh wax of either say molten speed wax or hot melt or whatever it may be. So just purchasing a pre-prep chain, so you can get them I believe from Silker with the hot melt. You can get them from M Speed Wax direct in Minnesota, and also I sell either I prep in either M Speed Wax, hot melt or graphene depending on the customer's choice. So really, I would say if I was in America, I would probably look to buy from America first, not to, sort of shoot ZFC sales down. But it's okay. I'm absolutely flat out on all fronts anyway. So, I guess the other really good reason to get a pre-prep chain, aside from the fact you don't have to do it yourself, is it will be done. Typically, obviously, better than what you can do at home. Lead time for fully optimized chains is a bit longer. It's sort of running at about 3 to 4 weeks because there's a lot of people buying them, and they do take a lot more labor. And I think the other thing really is just chain type. So, the chains themselves can have some reasonable differences in how fast they are and also how durable they are. So, depending on if you're running Shimano or SRAM, what chain choice you're going to actually use for your event chain might come into play. So
go ahead and be specific if you would.
Go ahead. We have sponsors here, but it doesn't matter. We want to do the best for our listeners. We want them to know what the faster chain is, what the durable chain is, all of that, what they should be running on race day. It's fine. Go ahead.
The fastest 12-speed chains that we know of are, strangely enough, so at the moment, and now these aren't my numbers to share. I don't own them because they come from a Denmark test lab, which I can't provide you numbers because I don't own them. But the fastest 12-speed chain that I know of, or that has been provided to me, is actually the Campy record 12-speed chain. It is blindingly fast. So now the record chain is the exact same dimensions as an Eagle chain. So if you're on SRAM, the record chain may be an option. However, it's only 114 links long, so a lot of mountain bike drivetrains may exceed that. So count your links before you look at that. So yes, and you can't, if you need 116 links, you just can't really, without a lot of faffing, add sort of 2 links in. You don't want 2 master links close together. That's just not great.
Right.
So, but that's really fast. I guess your easiest plug and play option, if you're on SRAM, would be the YBN, because that again is just the same dimensions, and they're a very fast chain. So the YBN 12 speed. If you're on, and the reason why I guess we're recommending those over the SRAM Eagle is that the SRAM Eagle chains, especially the XO1 and XX1, they are by far the world's most durable chain. So they're brilliant for training. Their I guess longevity against wear is unmatched, but they are also have been, I guess, tested to be really, really not fast. So there's actually a bunch of watts there just in the chain before we even talk about lubricant. So I train, for instance, I've got Axis on my bikes, on my mountain bikes, because at the time the 12 speed wasn't available. So I train on X1 and I race on either the YBN or the Campy 12 or the Shimano XTR. So if you're on Shimano, you're all set in terms of the Shimano chains are, Shimano always makes really fast chains. They always have. They have a bit of a secret sort of few things they do in their chain manufacturer. So the XTR chain or the XT chain is a brilliant chain. So if you're on Shimano, just stick with the XTR or XT chain. if you're running SRAM and you want to run the XDR chain, you can, but there's a couple of caveats. So one is that you do need an XDR12 compatible chainring. So the XDR with their Hyperglide Plus system, they have longer inner plate links and they just do not run on your normal sort of SRAM narrow wide or similar narrow wide chainring profiles. They will jump off the first time you change gears. They generally will play fine with cassettes, but I say like it's not 100%. So what we've found is that bikes with more extreme chainline angles, those longer inner plate links will start to rub on when you're running, say, your biggest cogs, and that can be not great. So it's one of those things where like the XCR12 chain works perfectly on my personal mountain bikes. So I can choose between, for my fast race day chains, between the XDR12 because I've got those chain rings on my bike already, or the record chain or the YBN, and either of those gives me a super fast chain. However, some customers that have tried the XDR12 chain have found that it does rub, or those inner plate links are rubbing when they're running, say, their 50 tooth or 52 tooth or whatever it may be. So it hasn't worked for them. So there is a little bit of a caveat for, I guess, SRAM drivetrain users that it will probably be fine if you go down the XDR path, but you may have an issue in those cogs.
Did we have more ability down at the 11-speed level? There's more cross-compatibility ability down at that level, correct?
Yeah, things have really got a bit more tricky at the 12-speed level, and Axis Road as well. So I'm not sure if anyone will be running an Axis Road drivetrain in this event versus Eagle, but Axis Road is its own standard. There are no other options for Axis Road as opposed to SRAM's Axis chains. So you can't get a YBN 12 or XDR 12 and run it on an Axis Road drivetrain like you can with an Eagle drivetrain, as long as you've got the compatible chainring. So, but yeah, there is literally there's a nice little handful of watts to be had if you're on SRAM by going to a faster chain versus the Eagle chain. So yeah, world's best training chains, but not as much for race day.
I'm sure Shimano will be happy to hear that, though. They're a big supporter of this podcast, and we've said it here before too, folks, is that the Shimano chain is a terrific chain, and even if you're on a different drivetrain, especially at the 11-speed level, if you're still running 11-speed, we're going to push you right to the Shimano chain because it does a great job. It's a fast chain. It's going to last long enough for you too, and man, on race day, you just want, you're looking for everything there. Whether you're 15 pounds too heavy or not, fatty, you want it all. So be a glutton, take it all in.
I was just going to say, there is a little bit of the chain efficiency data on. We did a best chain article with Cycling Tips when I did a chain longevity test project in conjunction with them. So there is some there that people can reference to, and they'll be able to sort of see some of the differences between some of the chains that we mentioned there at least, and get a bit of an idea. And yeah, I think the only other thing I was going to try to squeeze in was for people to consider chain line as well. So as some mountain bikes, I guess the geometries these days have changed a bit. So you might have quite short chain stays, around the 400, 410 mark, or you might have chain stays that are 420, 430. And this can actually really come into play quite a bit if you're running, say, a 50, 52 tooth cog and a large chainring, because the larger your cogs, obviously the more extreme your chain line becomes. And the more extreme your chain line is, then you do introduce quite a bit of extra friction into the system, because all of a sudden components of your chain that, say, when they're in a straight line have nearly no friction. So the side of the rollers to the side of the inner plate link and the inner plate link to the outer plate link, when they're in a straight line, they have extremely, really negligible friction there. Once you start loading that up on a chain line angle, then you start to really increase the load on those surfaces. So that's why you do get increased friction on high chain line angles. And yeah, if somebody's rocking say a 36 tooth chainring and a 52 tooth rear cog because they've got the latest Shimano, that can start to really come into play. So considering for the event, for the fact, I guess, that it's at altitude, so you may not be pushing the same watts as you do if you live somewhere at sea level. Do you need that 36, or is maybe a 32 going to be a better choice, because that's going to really drop down that chain line angle. And it's going to mean also more often that you may not need to be in the 52. Maybe you need to be in the next cog down, which is going to, because on some of those climbs, you're going to spend a lot of your time climbing. So if you reduce, I guess, by an hour, the amount of time you need to spend at an extreme chain line angle, you're going to be saving some watts there. So just, considering on that front as well.
Adam, it's been terrific having you on. I've looked forward to this conversation all season. When your gardener gets done there, why don't you start checking flights into Denver or somewhere and look at those Leadville dates? It's the second week in August. We'd love to have you out for race day, and then you can tag, lead boat onto the back end, and there might be something else there, maybe a dirty Kansas. We'd love to have you out here.
Yeah, I mean, I would just absolutely love to do these events. So we're very, very jealous down here in the land of Oz that we don't have such iconic events. So it is on the list. So
2023, Adam.
Yeah.
We're marking it on our calendars right now.
Excellent. I'll put it on mine. I'll start the applications.
Okay, a quick recap on the interview. To save the most watts and give yourself the best chance through the LT100 under normal conditions, Adam says go with a hot wax treatment. If you have to top off during the race, Silka's Super Secret Chain Lube is best, but anything here is better than nothing. If your chain is making noise, fatty, watts are being lost.
Now, hot wax treatments aren't for everyone, so Zero Friction Cycling likes a wax-based drip lube next for the LT100, and that would include Silka's aforementioned Super Secret, UFO's drip lube, or squirt. The key thing here is that these lubes need time to penetrate and dry, so apply the day before.
And for wet lubes, the ones that have tested best at ZFC are Silka's Synergetic and NFS. That's been Fatty's choice for a long time. Just remember, these lubes do attract dirt, so you may need to wipe and reapply mid-race. Zero Friction Cycling, again, they have a ton of info on chain care and wear, so that is a great resource for you if you have time to read it or read some of those reports before you head to Leadville. Our friend Josh at Silka recently put out a video on lube strategy for long, dirty events, and that is also worth a watch. And if you just need some one-on-one advice, I can answer some of those questions on our Slack workspace. You'll find it you'll find the link to it front and center at Leadville100podcast.com.
And something I can probably answer on that Slack workspace is your nutrition questions. Or if I can't, it may be the Brandon Dykstra House, Leadville veteran and nutrition guru at thefeed.com can answer, which brings us to our Feed Fail segment.
And this episode's Feed Fail comes to us from Jesse with an amazing story that serves as a cautionary tale to any Leadville racer. Here's what he says. Yeah, boy, this is a tough one, Fatty. I was eating and drinking according to plan, felt great, was making good time. I rolled into the base of Columbine with a strong group. And remember, a supporter on the side shouted out, "Great job, guys. You're on pace for 8 hours." I was pacing well at this point, but the altitude had me off my game. Well, it has everyone off their game, Jesse.
Yeah.
I was not eating. As I approached the Jeep Trail, my head was in a complete fog. I remember looking at the rider next to me and thinking, oh yeah, I'm in a mountain bike race. I was drinking but not getting the calories or sugar that I needed. As I got to the top of the climb, I stopped at the aid station. That's something we generally advise against. And I think I had some watermelon, a piece of banana, and a small cup or two of Coke.
That's not enough. Spoiler alert here. Jesse's day does not get better. Let's jump ahead to the end of the race. He says, my bottles were dry up Carter Summit, and instead of stopping at the aid station at the summit, I rolled past thinking I didn't have any time to spare. I don't have time to eat. Famous last words. I was in a true survival state and was not thinking clearly.
Well, somehow Jesse makes it down St. Kevin's, where he says, I was extremely sleepy, so, get this, I laid down in the ditch and took a nap. As you can imagine, this was a very concerning scene to all the riders passing by. Rider after rider stopped and checked on me, but I waved them all on without opening my eyes, saying, I'm just taking a quick nap. It's the LT100. It's nap time. Eventually, a good friend came up and recognized me. I was talking to him, but never opened my eyes. He called a couple friends, and being so close to the finish, they were able to get my supporters down to me. I ate and drank very little of what they gave to me, but it was enough to get me going. I was still thinking that I just needed to sleep. and not realizing I'd blown my nutrition so badly. I ended up finishing in 9 hours, 44 minutes, and have become known as Nap Man amongst my riding buddies.
Jesse, aka Nap Man, went from a very possible 8-hour finish to an actual 9:44. So, first of all, I want to say 9:44 is a great time, and there are many people who would be super happy with that. But, I mean, Jesse was looking for something a little faster, and I want to say thank you to him for his incredibly honest and self-deprecating feed fail here. It is a classic. I think he correctly identifies where the problem really begins. The notorious mental fog you slip into as you're climbing Columbine.
Anyone who's been on Columbine on race day knows that fog well. Look, nobody is smart at 12,000 feet. Nobody. If you make game time decisions about nutrition on the GO Trail, those decisions will come back to haunt you in the second half of the race, and that's a guarantee.
Yeah. So make your feed decisions long before the race, as in now, before your next long training ride. Then on race day, don't think. Just execute and trust the plan that has worked for you in the past. This is how you stave off a bonk so epic that you need to take a nap, literally 3 miles from the finish line. Plan now, practice now with nutrition from thefeed.com, then execute with that same nutrition in the same way on race day.
Hey, Jesse, thanks for sending that feed fail. It was incredible. Listeners, send us your own feed fails to the Leadville Podcast Hotline. It is 719-453-1514. And go to thefeed.com/Leadville for a 15% discount on everything at the feed. And thanks to the feed for sponsoring this segment of the show.
Let's go ahead and wrap this episode. Big thanks to Adam Kerin of Zero Friction Cycling for finding us 10 minutes.
And apparently speed runs in the Kerin family. Adam's wife, Nusha, I hope I pronounced that correctly, is quick on her feet. She has a sub 3-hour finish at the Adelaide Marathon. And
oh my gosh,
she's quick on the bike. She's undefeated in every uphill time trial she has entered, including TTs in Italy on the Gavia and Monterola, an event put on by Alberto Contador. In fact, she got a prize, her award, from El Pistolero himself. So pretty cool.
Wow.
I also want to thank our listeners who have joined us on social media. Fatty's on Twitter @FatCyclist, and I am on Instagram @Michael Houghton. Of course, we are both on the Facebook Leadville 100 Mountain Bike Participants page.
And if you want to have a conversation, whether it's about nutrition or waxing your chain, join our Slack channel. You'll find a link to it over at Leadville100podcast.com. If you have chain or lube questions, we can attempt to answer them. So please come on over and share.
If you like the show, go to wherever you listen and give us a 5-star rating and write a review. Of course, use whatever podcast player you like, but we will note that Apple Podcasts has been having some trouble with posting our shows and many other shows for that matter. So maybe head over to pod.link/Leadville and check out one of the many other podcasting listening platforms that is we're on.
Good luck in your training, everyone. Thanks for listening, and we will see you very soon. The month after next, holy cow, at the 2021 starting line.